But what I want to talk about today is we've been talking about spiritual direction. I'd like to go into it, to present to you one of the most extreme conceptions of what it is, and yet a conception that I think is to some extent feasible and acceptable. And this is what seems to be the real guru concept. What a guru really is. You hear all sorts of stuff about gurus this, gurus that, and the Beatles going to the guru and all that sort of stuff. And most of them are phonies, or they're nowhere, not quite it isn't quite the real thing. And I have dug up some stuff here that says what I think is probably the most authentic idea you get of the guru concept. See what it really means. And I will present this to you. Now, what I'm doing now is exposition. See, I am simply setting this out, trying to set it out as clearly as possible in the terms of the people who hold this. I'm not selling this, see. Obviously, I'm not going to sell you a guru concept that is going to be utterly impossible for you ever to do anything about, see. This is a kind of guru concept that you're not going to be able to do much about unless all of a sudden you get on your flying carpet and go to India or something like that, but it just, it's not. But yeah, and on the other hand, you will, because I hope, if I can keep my eye on the time, to leave a few minutes at the end to comment and to sort of apply this and give my own ideas about it and show how perhaps it can be applied in our life in a very simple way. But before that, I want to give you a sort of a rundown on what this guru pitch really is all about. In India, you've got an extremely there never was religion more complex and more full of funny kinds of development, and good and bad and indifferent sort of development as in India. India is full of this fantastic flowering of all kinds of religious things, natural, supernatural, preternatural, and so forth. Consequently, you can't make any real simple statement about India without qualifying it immediately in 100 different ways. And so a guru is much more than, you may all have sort of vague pictures of what goes on in India, and I don't suppose I've got anything much more to tell you about it, except that I do know I have known some people from India, and I've had some contact with them, and I know I've got a vague idea of how complex it really is. But anyway, a guru is not merely just a saint. See, now there may be, one of the things that happens in India is that a person can immediately be overwhelmed if there's any indication whatever that he's at all spiritual, why he's a big success. See, India is a religious country, and all a guy's got to do is just sort of set himself up as some kind of a spiritual man, and everybody will take care of him. He's it. This is it. He's a spiritual man. See? And I guess they have to work a little for it. They have to be fairly genuine, but almost anybody that's doing anything, you bury yourself in the sand with your arms sticking out and put a hat there or something, and people go by and put some pennies in. You're a holy man. You're meditating underground with your arms sticking out. See? All right. Well, now, the mere fact that somebody's a saint may mean that people may be because India is full of people who are or who claim to be saints, and many of them are in a certain way. I won't go into the supernatural angle, whether they're canonizable by the Vatican or anything, but let's assume that they're, in some sense or other, genuinely holy men. Now, these people will be, usually, they seem to end up in some sort of a static situation where people come and look at them or are with them or something. But a saint can be just some guy sitting in a cave somewhere a long way away, and then people will go and just have a good look at him. There he is. See, and sort of sit down and pray with him and that sort of thing. It's kind of it's understood that they go to sort of get contact with this sort of source of peace and radiation of holiness and so forth and so forth. But this is not necessarily a guru. Or you may get a fellow who's teaching you some kind of a yogic method, see, or some new method of prayer, and this is not necessarily a guru. And this is the point I would really like to make clear, is that a guru is not just somebody who's got a system, see. So therefore, your friend of the Beatles there is not necessarily the ideal guru at all. He's got a quick method, see. Okay, but that's not the real guru thing at all, see. The fact that somebody pops up with a quick method And he will also sell you your private mantram. You see, a mantram is a prayer like the Jesus prayer, only in Sanskrit and with a slightly different text and so forth. And there's a choice of about 300 of them. And really one of the things that one of these instructors, not necessarily guru, an instructor would do would be to find out what's a good mantram for you and reveal it to you and then say, get to work and repeat that all day. This guy will give you a mantram for, $100 or something like that. I forget. I don't know exactly what the scoop is, see. Well, okay, that's not being a guru at all. It's got nothing to do with being a guru. What a guru does is he is a person who, without not so much instruction, but simply by personal influence, presence, and contact, because what you're supposed to do is go and live with him, see. You join a group of people that are sitting around with him all day long. He's sort of, I don't know how these guys really have a certain kind of stability that I don't understand. They're just there, apparently. The picture you get is that here's this bird sitting there in the room, and maybe he goes out for a walk in the garden. Everybody follows him. Already got no privacy. See, privacy finished. When you become a guru, you've had it. See, so he's just sitting there. Then everybody sits there, and they all just sit around, and they sort of meditate. When he's meditating, they meditate, and sometimes they ask him a question, and maybe he answers, maybe he doesn't. But they're just sort of all there. He's there, and then people just gather around. See. And when he goes for a walk, they all get up and go for a walk with him. And when he goes to eat, they all go eat with him, and so forth and so forth. He's got him on his back all day long. See, but he's taking it on because he's a guru. So he's going to. Now, what he has to do is, in this situation, he is constantly influencing these people, not by talk, but direct. See, the idea is that he is constantly exercising direct influence on these people. And in this authentic case, which I'm describing by the witness of some people who were there, who were in this thing, who were disciples of this man, what he does is he recollects them, for example. See, they're all sitting around, and so he meditates, and then he sort of broadcasts, so to speak, to them his own recollection and peace, and they're all real happy. They all sit around with the guru, he's meditating, and we're all at peace. See, and apparently this works, and so forth. And, or at least they think so. At least they've got themselves believing that this is happening. And if they've got themselves believing that it's happening, if it keeps them happy, well, it's working in a psychological way. I'm not talking about the supernatural or anything like that, but anyway, they think he's happy, they think they're happy, everybody's happy. Well, it works. See, at least they're all sitting there. They're not there. That keeps them out of the pool hall. Let's put it that way. But I mean, there's something going on. See. Then another thing that he does is that his great function, the great function of a guru, is to awaken the heart and to bring about spiritual rebirth. See, this awakening of the heart, that is to say, not by direct instruction. He doesn't say, awaken your heart. See, he doesn't say, or he doesn't, he knows how to, first of all, in two ways, as we'll say that. First of all, he directly acts upon your heart in such a way that you come to, eventually, at the right moment, you come to a kind of an awakening, and you sort of see it. And his idea, apparently what a guru does, is that he lives amid all these people and gets to know them very well indeed, and sort of acts on them in such a way, either by word or directly, and he knows what's going on in them, and he can sort of tell when they're ready, and he gives a little sort of a push or a little sort of a something, and there is he moves them on another step, see. And there's not much methodical going on in this particular situation that I'm talking about here. And of course, I suppose this is meant to bring out, I guess the way I read this particular text is we're supposed to get the idea of the guru coming out clearly apart from any ascetic method. This one hasn't got any ascetic method. See, they don't particularly fast. They don't have any much ritual or anything like that. They just sort of live around with the guru. And it's a very freewheeling situation. It's kind of an undisciplined situation from many points of view because the guru's kids keep running in the place, see. And the kids are playing, and his wife comes in and all that sort of stuff, and everybody else's kids, I presume that some of their own kids are there. It's a house, see, a home. And all this is going on. And you've got people sitting around very recollected and kids playing, see. And Probably the farm animals are just outside the door, and all that sort of stuff. Everybody's milling around. This is an Indian house, typical of thousands of years, and nobody minds too much. See, the guru doesn't say, shush, silence please, and that sort of stuff. He just sits there and he meditates, and they meditate, and if he's got something to say, he says it, and somebody else got something to say, he says it. And this person here, giving her record of what went on, describes the different characters of the people, and some of these guys are great jokers. See, some of these disciples, there are a few disciples of the guru that are real characters and jokers and loud talkers and that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's just very much that kind of thing. See, it's a real little sort of an ancient, traditional little social nucleus. See, it is not at all a strange kind of organization. See, and it's not at all as an esoteric sort of a thing. It is just an ordinary little social group of the simplest possible kind, and of the kind that goes back thousands and thousands of years, back to village society. See, and I suppose that's really what it's meant to be. Now, of course, let me inject right away. A thought that comes to me is that this is a characteristically monastic situation. This is just what the first monasteries were like, to a great extent, except they were perhaps more disciplined. Perhaps. Because remember that we get our pictures of these early monasteries through people like Cashin, who are obviously, Cashin's, one of the things about Cashin's account of the Egyptian monks is that it is telling the French monks how far short they are. It's written for French monks, see. And he's telling the French monks, you guys think you're monks, but you've never seen a monk. This is the way a monk really is. And then he gives this picture of this Egyptian office where nobody even dares clear his throat, see. And never, never, never in Egypt did anybody at the night office ever clear his throat, see. Well, okay, you can see right away that there's something a little bit funny about this account of monasticism. See, I mean, if these Egyptians never cleared their throat, well, let's look into this. See, so, but really, probably, I would say that early monasticism was something along this kind of pattern, very much so. See, a simple group of people living around a master. But of course, again, you've got, monasticism itself is a very complex thing, see. But obviously there were monastic communities along this pattern. And the great thing that seems to activate everybody in this particular situation is this trust and this conviction that in this guru they've really found somebody who knows what it's all about, and who knows them, and who can do this for them. Now, of course, let it be said right away that the guru himself, in order to do this, has to be quite something. See, evidently, I don't see how anybody could get away with this if he really didn't have something. So, obviously, the way it's usually described is that somebody who can do this has advanced very, very far himself. And he is obviously somebody who is not only very holy, but very, very developed in the sense of having practically got rid of any ego whatever. See, a person in this kind, and I don't see how a person could live this kind of life, the kind of life that a man in this position has to live, if he had any particular desires of his own. Unless it was some very subtle kind of desire for spiritual authority or something like that, which could be possible. But I mean, because the man just has he doesn't belong to himself anymore. See, if he's going to live like this, I mean, even when he's sleeping, he maybe gets 3 hours sleep a night or something like that. Even when he's sleeping, these guys are sitting around trying to get the influence, you see. I mean, some bird might have got the inspiration to get real close to the guru while he sleeps and sort of pick up so maybe there's some special radiations that come out during sleep. See, he wants those too, or something. But his life is public from 24 hours a day. He's never alone. See, which is why I can see that I'm not called to this. Not called to this at all. Yes.
People who do that, how do they work? Do they just do it for short periods at a time?
You mean the people that come to him? The idea is that they come to him until they've made it to a kind of a pretty definitive sort of a breakthrough, see, which would be a matter of a year or two, something like that. There may be a bunch who would be just permanently with him as kind of disciples and servants and helpers and that sort of thing. See, there would be a group that would just sort of stick to him and kind of help him out, because he would need a lot of help. But normally what they do is go live with him until they've broken through pretty definitively. Then they go back home, but as kind of not missionaries, so to speak, but still representing. I mean, they've still got something of his to transmit to other people, not a message so much. But they are his disciples, and they are out in the world radiating something of the peace and the experience that they found with him. And then what happens, evidently, is that they occasionally all come back again together. See? Now, again, the thing that comes right into my mind is, of course, like somebody like St. Francis with his first disciples. See? Again, the same sort of thing. See? And no matter how you look at it, such a thing is possible. See, such things do happen. You do have people with this charism, I mean, this really fantastic charism for opening people up, and they somehow can do it. And then, of course, the great thing is an atmosphere of real love and trust between this guru and his disciples. There has to really be that. And, of course, it ties in with the idea, traditional in Christian monasticism, of spiritual fatherhood. See, in the Desert Fathers and in early monasticism, the idea was never that a man was just a director, see, who taught you a method. But he was a father who begot spiritual life, see, who, in a certain sense, brought you to new birth in the Spirit. And so this idea of a kind of special spiritual power is extremely important in all this, see. It's not at all just a question of having a method, having a system. But obviously, another thing that comes in very, very clearly, although the word is never said, or at least I never see it said, is obviously these disciples have to have an enormous amount of faith. See, they believe in this person. They believe in this guru. They have great faith in him. And we'll see to what extent that goes in a minute. We'll sort of get down to this. Now let me read, I have to translate from French, but it's not too hard. This is what the account given by one of these people. This is a Westerner who went through this experience with this particular guru, just sort of living with all this crowd. See, once again, if you try to imagine it, you see, it's a very, it would be rather tough to do, I should think. Because, remember, this is India now, this isn't America. You're not sitting in chairs, you're sitting on the floor, you know, and you're sort of living in a kind of a very simple big hut sort of a place, and then, as I say, all these people are running around, and everything is very primitive and so forth. And you just live with this in the surroundings of this group. Now, here is what she thought she had to do, and so to speak, what she did. Now, this expression of the problem of the thing that has to be broken through is what we've been talking about for about 6 months. See, remember what we have been discussing. See. The theme of all this talk, and the thing that I'm really interested in, and the thing I really think is important, realizing that we have to break through the shell of a more or less commonplace and common sense existence. See, that there is more to life than just living an ordinary routine, and yet we have to make this breakthrough within the framework of ordinary life. See, so that therefore it is a question of a rebirth, a new birth, which is very important for thinking of monastic renewal. That's what it involves. And here's how she sort of sets it up. While in normal life, man is extended toward the outside, and he thinks and wishes and loves in function of his leanings and of all his conditioning, exercising what he calls his liberty, which is nothing but the exteriorization of interior constraint. That's a very good, very, very good statement there. It's a very good insight. See. But what people think is their freedom on this superficial level is nothing but the exteriorization of inner constraints. Think of that a little bit, because that's very true. See, you think of that, just think in terms of some of the things that people want to do so badly. I mean, they want to have fun, and they want to get around and make a lot of money and exercise their power and that sort of thing. And to do that, they feel to be an exercise of freedom, and it isn't. It's being impelled by interior constraint. This is something that we have to remember all along the line, you see, because it comes in so much now. We see it so much now when we're facing some of the new problems involved in monastic renewal. When a lot of people may think that something means development, when in fact it's acting out a neurosis or something. See, we have to keep that in mind, that this can possibly happen. See, but on the other hand, we have to avoid the rigidity and so forth that we're trying to get away from. But you have to avoid both these extremes. See, so all right, and this demands the complete sacrifice of the self, of the ego. This sacrifice is a superhuman enterprise which few people are capable of carrying out without a powerful and enlightened guide, because on the level of the subconscious, one runs into titans, see, titanic forces in the subconscious, and we know this, everybody knows this. And indeed, the complexes acquired in childhood, hereditary defects, I don't know if there are such things as hereditary defects, that's quite a question. You don't inherit defects, do you? You might inherit propensities to do certain things, but you don't inherit defects, you learn them. That's what I always thought. You might learn them from your parents, but you're learning them. Anyway, we'll skip that. Defects, whether they're hereditary or not, they're there. All the traces of our personal and racial past, on one hand, and the impress of modern education, which is a true training in negation, revolt, and irresponsibility. Well, I think she's got something there, you know? I mean, we might stop and think about that a little bit. You know, we can't be all the time saying, gee, what's modern? This is great, this is modern, you know. Maybe it's not so hot, see. Anyway, like I say, I just put it out. I set it forth. Take it for what it's worth. But she says that anyway. These things have made of us rigid and mechanical machines locked up in individualism. Alas, even when one has seen this process and the necessity of breaking through it, one does not have the force to transcend his own limits and to break his chains. Well, whatever way you want to look at it, she's got something. See, she is talking about, this is straight stuff, see. And she says, well, now the way to do this, she thought, was to find this guru. And she said that the thing that the guru did for her were two things. First, this direct action, in which he, so to speak, transmitted directly and in silence the priceless and unequaled gift which awakens the mystical heart and raises up or, well, calls into being great spiritual experiences. In other words, this direct trend, now maybe it's, I don't know, hypnosis or something, I don't know. But anyway, there is this idea of a direct transmission of something that breaks this bond of all the things that she was talking about before. Okay. Now, I'm just saying, I'm not selling you this, I'm not saying that this is something you got to go and get, I'm just saying this is what they claim, see. Well, if somebody's got some of that around, I'd like to see him. See, I mean, you know, if there's somebody doing this, I think it'd be worth, I mean, I'd just soon go to him as go to a head shrinker. I'd probably get more out of it, see. So, I think that there may be something to this. See. There's probably more in this than meets the eye. Now, the second thing that he does is he does have private interviews with individuals, but most of the time it's with this whole group, with this whole communal group all the time. And what he does is he has a very, very simple. He gives talks. Well, he doesn't really give talks. He just talks. I mean, he gets an idea. He may open up and say something. See. And if some of the guys are in ecstasy, well, they don't hear it for the moment, but it's not for them, see. But the others, they'll sort of listen. And what he'll say, he may just tell simple little stories. And this simple little story pitch seems to be very much part of this traditional spiritual master thing. Just simple little stories taken from anywhere, maybe the Bible, maybe the Hindu traditions and so forth. But he will say them in such a way that people who, obviously these people are all attending very carefully to what he's saying, they will pick up something for themselves out of it. They kind of get, and they sort of seem to be on the right wavelength to know when he's saying something specially for them, and then they pick that up, so forth. Well, okay. And this is sort of his indirect approach. But the idea comes up that these people are simply abandoned to the action of this guru. I mean, they have complete faith in him, complete confidence in him, and complete abandonment to his action. Well, that takes an awful lot of doing, and I mean, I would find it'd be rather hard to see Western people really doing that. See, this is the thing that always comes back to me, is that that's all very well, but we're pretty skeptical people, you know. I mean, it's maybe some might be inclined to do that, but I wonder. Okay. But still, anyway, okay. Evidently, these Western people did it, so I guess it's possible. But that's what it implies. But now the question arises: well, isn't this sort of a too passive? See, isn't there something wrong with this? I mean, is it right for a human being? I mean, he's surrendering his autonomy. See, this is the sort of thing, I mean, you know, that it's going to be highly questioned. Yes? Well, yeah, of course. You could do it with television. See, that's perfectly okay, but don't go doing it to some Hindu. See, that's not acceptable. See, if you do it, but it is sort of like that, except that I think there's probably much more going on. See, I mean, they do have to work at something. In TV, apparently, you don't have to work at anything. You don't even have to work the button. You work it from where you're sitting. But they do have to work at this. Now, but there is one very interesting point that does come up here. And that is this idea of how this comes about and what they think is going on. The real thing that has happened there is, once again, that the person has not just found somebody with a system, but he has found a person in whom his own vocation is somehow or other planted. But let me just read this, and then I'll try to comment on it, and then I think we'll just have a few minutes to talk about the point that I would like to make in regard to this for us. This abandonment, well, let's see, she goes back and says, it would be a great mistake to consider abandonment as simple passivity in the usual sense of the word. In the eyes of the mystic, it is the ordinary man who is passive. One of the great steps on our road is to unmask the interior tyrants, which, without knowing it because we identify with them, dictate our conduct to us. And these are our tastes, our ideas, and our pretended wills. Now, let me say that again, because this is a little revolutionary for us fellows. Our tastes, our ideas, and our pretended wills. See, now we are right now in this great upsurge of, we've got a great upsurge of what we're doing, pretty intent on developing our tastes and our ideas and our wills. See, well, now that's good too, but remember that this is a different context. See, and it's all very well. If you're going to have something to renounce, you better have it before you try to renounce it. And so if you haven't any ideas, well, you can't renounce them because you haven't got any to renounce. So get some, but then renounce them later. See, there is a time when we're going to have to renounce these. If you don't have any tastes, well, you can't renounce them. So develop some, and then later on you're going to renounce them. See, so this is part of the thing. It isn't just a question of developing this famous personality. You're also going to renounce it. See. But the reason why we're now talking in terms of developing a personality is that we never even had one before. So, all right, that being clear, then she says, in this condition, the abandonment of the disciple is not just the submission of one man to another. The choice of the disciple by the master chooses the disciple. Now, as you go along here, you should be getting some strange echoes from somewhere. You ever hear somebody say, you have not chosen me, I have chosen you. See, things like that. That's the point. If the bell suddenly rings, the point that I want to make is that this is exactly the way our Lord dealt with his disciples. See? This is precisely the kind of situation that the disciples and the apostles lived in. It's exactly that sort of thing. The choice of the disciple by the master and the recognition of the master by the disciple sets the seal upon a destiny according to the most fundamental and secret laws of the world, without the personality of one or the other being a determining cause. See, it is not a question that this guru is a wonderful guy or anything like that. He is just simply the instrument of God. And it's not that this is a great spiritual friendship thing. It is simply a relationship set up by God in his providence. And the way it is said here is, to me, very impressive. The disciple glimpses the infinite in the depthless depth of the master, then the attraction is too great. No one can evade the call of his deepest nature, and he must reply in the place where it has been heard. In other words, then, the idea that is involved here is that, quite apart from any sort of personal thing or personal friendship or anything like that, a realization on the part of the master and the disciple that this is something that has been set up by God and has to be done. And that, yes?
Guru is something like John the Baptist pointed to someone else.
Yeah, sure. But except that someone else is present in him. See, now you're dealing with Hindus, see.
Because John the Baptist, in reading the scriptures, the people came to him.
Yeah, but I mean, see, this is much more like Christ himself, actually. See? So then the point I would like to make then is, okay, we have a master. See, the fact that this was the relation of Christ with his disciples is a clue to how we can apply this to ourselves. Do we have to go running to India? Well, it's not going to be easy if that's what we have to do. So, but then we have the Gospels, and we open up the Gospels, and we find in the Gospels this same kind of relationship set up between Christ and his disciples. See, but we also find very clearly stated something by our Lord saying that this relationship is not confined to those who were historically contemporary with him on earth, and that this relationship continues down the centuries. Behold, I am with you all days, even to the end of the world. Now just suppose, if these people can have enough faith to believe in this influence of some guy sitting on a floor in an Indian hut, see, what about us? Have we got the faith to take Christ as our guru? Now, see, if this guy sitting on the floor in an Indian hut can open up and awaken the heart of people just because it's an Indian tradition, well, we are told in the gospel that this is what Christ will do to us, and that Christ will give to us his Spirit, who will teach us all things, whatsoever he has said, and so forth. And that nobody needs to teach us anything that the Spirit will teach us. See, I think, and then just you think in terms of these fellows sitting around this guy in this hut. What about the Blessed Sacrament? See, because I know it's not fashionable to talk about these things, but just what about the Blessed Sacrament? See, look, there is a presence there. See, maybe there is such a thing. If these guys can sit around this old fellow with a beard, maybe there's something to being before the tabernacle for 2 seconds once in a while. See, all these things sort of bring back to mind the importance of the personal relationship of the disciple to Jesus as to a master, a living, present master who just doesn't happen to be as visible as the guy sitting in the hut. This, I think, is something that we have sort of forgotten. And I think it's something that we really need to work on in terms of, you take something like what this guru is doing, and you realize that this is something that Christ can and does do, and is doing. And if you will let him do this, he will do this. I think this is something to think about. But it is very good, to see how these Hindu people, with the means at their disposal, to see what they do with a human master. I think we can do that with a divine master. Our help is in the name of the Lord.